Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another question and answer. After last week's question and answers, I actually got a lot of really good questions on both the YouTube page, on the Facebook page, and I even got one on Twitter. Although the Twitter one was asked without the knowledge of this particular question and answer series, it was just one that was poorly suited for the podcast of which I am a part. So I have a bunch of questions and therefore a bunch of answers, and let's just get straight into them. We'll start with, last week I answered a question about elemental genres, and I was incorrect about what elemental genres are. I thought they were, basic genres like mystery and things like that, but it's actually lower than that. Elemental genres are actually genres like sub-elements of genres like comedy and mystery, romance. Mystery, as in the element mystery, not the genre mystery. So, what are my favorite elemental genres? Comedy. I feel like every good story has got some comedy in it. Even a tragedy should have some comedy in it. Least favorite. I don't dislike romance, but I don't do it very well, and as a result, you'll find it is rare in my writing. But I think the key with all of those genres is contrast. If you're trying to write an emotionally impactful story that's supposed to really be very, very dramatic and very serious, you have to put in moments of levity. You have to put in some comedy. Just for the same reason where if you're trying to create a very light picture, if there's no darkness at all in that picture, it's hard to tell that it's even light, or at least how light it's supposed to be. So I am a strong proponent of sort of bookending darkness with light, or vice versa, and I think that's a good policy for writers in general. So that is my correction and omission from last week's question. Now we'll get on to the new ones. The first one, and you're gonna have a little bit of extra on this one. This is from Isabel on Twitter. She asked me to talk about idea generation. Where do I get my ideas? And generally speaking, I get my ideas from everywhere. Like every song I listen to will get my imagination going. Every movie I watch, every book I read, everything. If I'm watching a movie, then when I see what happened in the movie, I'll start thinking about, well, how would that have happened in this setting? Well, what would my characters have done in that situation? And it starts to produce, ideas. And I almost feel this way, even bad movies might even be better than good movies in terms of giving you ideas of what to do, because you can say, why did they do it that way? It would have been so much better if they did it this way. And they didn't do it that way, which means you can do it that way. So my inspiration, my ideas are largely from just inserting lots of input into my brain and finding ways to make that into fiction. And we're going to roll that forward. Listen to the next answer if you're interested about idea generation, because it fits into that too. But I got some extremely well-written questions. Like, this person should be an interviewer. This is on the Facebook fan page. Victoria asked these questions. I'm going to try to read them correctly off of the page now. I'm not great at reading things out loud, which is why I don't do my own audiobooks, in case you're wondering. Okay, Victoria says, question 1. Books have the power to draw people in, feel emotions, and sympathize with the characters. Authors often use this to teach lessons, to open people's minds and allow readers to see things from new or different points of view, etc. i.e., Tolstoy, to write a good work one must love its basic fundamental idea. Where do the ideas for your stories begin? So we'll start there. I had mentioned about my idea generation already, but in addition to what I already said, I usually start my stories with either the characters. I'll start with the characters and build them out, or I'll start with, in the example of Free Wrench was the first and only time I've looked at a genre that I'd never really immersed myself in and decided to try writing in it. And in that case, I started with a setting, but the second thing I did was characters. So for me, I start with characters. Now, do I have a fundamental idea? Sometimes I do, but more often I again start with characters, but then the characters have to have a fundamental idea, because important things are done by people who believe strongly in things. So my characters have to believe strongly in things, and you're gonna read, you'll know what those things are. Obviously, I'm doing a bad job as a writer if you don't know what my characters believe. And I do notice multiple lessons. Yes, there are multiple lessons in the Book of Deacon series. Book of Deacon is largely anti-war, specifically anti-pointless war, war for the war for the sake of war. It's anti-slavery, which I think is a I think we can all sort of agree is a universal thing that we can embrace. And it's pro-family, even if that family is it's pro-togetherness, really. Like pulling together into a group and sort of making your own family even if you don't have one. These are sort of the key things that drive the characters. Some of them, again, like Miranda is going to feel very strongly anti-war just by the virtue of her history. I'm not wearing the spoiler hat yet, so I won't go into what her history is. Likewise, anti-slavery would be very strong in the minds of certain characters. And I think that when you see why they feel that way and the things they do about those things, I think that can provide an important lesson. Okay, so next. Question 2 from Victoria. You were a computer engineer. I was a computer engineer. I definitely noticed the use of logic through the Book of Deacon series, and this is one of my favorite parts of your novels, i.e. the logistics behind the way spells work. I find that it adds a level of depth and detail to your work. I find that oftentimes people think that they can only be either creative or logistical. I tutor, and I notice this with my students. Do you have any thoughts on this? Yeah, I can certainly see why people would feel that way, that you can only be creative or logistical. I had a teacher in college. His name was Dr. Friedland, and he described engineers as creative problem solvers, and that's sort of where my brain has always been on the subject. Is creativity is a part of everything. If you're good at your job, you have to be creative. Even if you're sort of a worker drone type of a job where you're just putting pieces together, the person who finds a better way to do it, or the person who heck, even if you don't come up with a better way to do it, while you are doing something that does not engage the creative part of your brain, your mind wanders and engages itself creatively anyway. So I think that creativity is an essential part. In fact, one of the later questions here is, do you feel you can only be creative or logistical? I believe you can only be creative, and the logistics comes later. Do I feel I am more logistical or creative? I feel I'm more creative. Back when I was in high school, we had a thing called Talented Art. It was a extracurricular activity that actually was during the class day, which meant I had to miss history class in order to go to Talented Art. And I tried out. You weren't necessarily accepted into it. You had to actually sort of be selected by the art teacher. And I don't know if I've ever shared any of my own art, but I'm not a very good artist. It takes me a very long time to make something even, respectable. But I was in Talented Art every time I tried out for it. And it wasn't because I was a good artist, it was because I was creative. When I was unable to do the task at hand, I at least did something with the materials I was given. One time we were supposed to make fancy flowers, fancy paper flowers, and they gave us these pieces of colored wire to use as the stems. And I could not make a good-looking wire. I could not make a good-looking flower. But I took the wire and I made little stick figures and scenes out of the wire. And then next year in Talented Art, we had a project where we had to make little figures out of wire. She totally got that from me. So creativity I've always been better at. And then I went into a job where it was all logistics. And I did always sort of think that while you could be both, the logistics would get you your paycheck and the creativity is what you did with the money. Like that was always sort of mine. Like you are a professional engineer and then on the side you are a creative writer. I didn't think that I would ever be able to combine career and creativity into a single entity, but, well, here we are. So, there are those questions. Excellent, excellent questions. Thank you very much for those. Okay, another question we have here, also from the Facebook page, is Jesse says, first and foremost, what's the process you go through to kill a character? Do you plan it, or can it be decided as the plot develops? Is there any character that you've planned to kill but has survived, or a character you plan to survive but killed because you didn't like them anymore? And how is Michelle pronounced? We'll start at the last one. Michelle is pronounced Michelle. It's like Michelle, only with an at the end. So that's the quick answer. For the rest of the answers, I have to put on the spoiler hat. So stand by. Spoiler hat engaged. From this point forward, you will be hearing plot elements of the stories. If you have not read the Book of Deacon or the rest of my stories, please be aware that you may run into spoilers. In fact, you will run into spoilers. Checking my notes, I think I only talk about the Book of Deacon trilogy here, so you're probably safe with my other stories if you haven't read them, but still, it's the spoiler hat, it is treacherous. Okay, so, process to kill a character. Do I decide first or do it as the plot develops? The answer to that is both. Usually, I mean, killing a character should be a pretty big deal. So usually it's one of the handful of key points that I have to sort of set beforehand, particularly because it's got far-reaching implications for later on. So usually it comes along in the planning phase, but occasionally as I'm writing I will realize, it would really be really impact us well right here. This would really add a lot of punch to the story as if this character didn't survive. So it can be a spur-of-the-moment thing, particularly with minor characters, like the red shirts of Star Trek. Those are probably afterthought additions. I don't have a lot of red shirt characters, at least not that are good guys. Okay, plan to kill but survived. Believe it or not, at the end of the Book of Deacon trilogy, Miranda was going to die. Lane dies instead. The original plan, right up until very, very shortly, in fact, you can sort of spot not one but two places in Book 3 of the trilogy when Miranda probably was going to die. In fact, depending on how technical you are, Miranda did die twice in the series, but she came back. Do you guys notice a wormhole style time skip just now? Pretty sure I was wearing a different shirt. Well, anyhow, back to the things. So that's a character who was supposed to die but survived. A character who was supposed to survive but died. Well, I mean, technically, I can go through and just bring up that Lane took Miranda's place as the character that died. That's the first one that comes to mind. I'm not sure. Again, surprisingly few characters actually die in my stories. They seem to die, but seldom does it remain so. I have other things regarding deaths of characters, but those would be spoilers for things that haven't come out yet. And even with the power of the spoiler hat, I'm not going to spoil the future. And don't read too deeply into that, people who will be reading my future books. You never know. You never know when the character may or may not die. I guess that sort of finishes that up. So, are there any other things I need to say in this here video? Well, thanks a lot, everyone, for listening to me ramble. And, keep your eyes peeled for more cool stuff in the future. If you've got any other questions that are spoilers or otherwise, let me know. I shall endeavor to answer them, hopefully without going through a wormhole halfway through. And thanks for reading.